during her Croatian presidency. She holds a PhD in mathematics and is a full professor at the University of Zagreb, where she has served as vice rector for students and study programs. Her area of expertise besides mathematics includes strategic decision-making in higher education, online education, social dimension of HE, curriculum development, assessment of learning outcomes, learning analytics, quality culture in HE, and popularization of science. Let's have a warm welcome for Professor Blashenka Divjak.
Thank you very much for your introduction. And thank you for inviting me. I'm really honored to have opportunity today to address you and share experience gathered during my term as a minister. I finished my term as a minister just a couple of weeks ago, but also my experience as an educator and researcher. I really believe that sharing and co-creating is at the very heart of successful transformation of education, and that good education is a great unifying force all around the globe. There is a widening disparity, as we heard so far, between the technology and talent we need to compete in the fourth industrial revolution. At the same time, we are obliged to give equal opportunities for all children and young people around the globe, and especially in our own countries. Probably you know, Croatia is a beautiful country with a lot of potential, but relatively small in population size, especially comparing to India. And of course, Croatia is the European Union member state. And it is a kind of really good, let's say, opportunity for us to learn from the other European countries. Probably you know that European education area, it is let's say something that it is very important for European Union, but each European country is responsible for its own education and training system. So it means that EU policy is designed to support national action and help address some common challenges like COVID-19 pandemics, as we mentioned before, or skills deficit in the workforce or technological development. But at the same time, we have rather good instruments of recognition of qualification throughout the European Union. As you heard before, Croatia chaired the Council, the European Union, in the first half of this year. So it means that we should we coordinated all these activities around countering the COVID-19 crisis. Especially, it was my job to do it in the scope of education and training, and you can find a lot of data on that online as well. We also, in the first half of this year, we also had a very good discussion on the teachers and trainers for the future, because we know that teachers are actually the cornerstones of every reform, and so that these conclusions are also available. And last document I would like to mention here, it is so-called Zagreb Call for Action on Brain Circulation, because you know that in European Union, as probably in India, there are areas that are better developed with better educational systems and opportunities, and others that are underdeveloped. And I used to say that talents are distributed evenly, but opportunities are not. So we should struggle to give opportunities for all of them. As a minister in the last couple of years, I work on several reforms. Reform of the general education, so first 12 years of schooling, then reform of the vocational education and training, and of course, relevance of higher education and excellence in science. I'm going to just stick to the reform of curricular reform of general education because there is no time to explain all the details of other reforms. So the goals are probably similar to the goals that other countries, and as far as I know, the same is for India, have right now. It is to meet the 21st century needs. So it means to enhance certain competencies like problem solving, critical thinking, creativity, digital skills, informed decision making, and so on, but also to provide equal opportunities for all children. So inclusiveness and student centeredness is very important in our reform. And last but not the least, to ensure holistic development of every child and a young person, also to be responsible citizens, as you very nicely mentioned before. So we started with our strategy of higher for education and science in 2014. It was adopted by the Parliament, and after that, several drafts of curriculum and documents were prepared. And then finally, we started with so-called experimental phase of curricular reform in 2018. So it means that we started with 5% of schools all around Croatia. So it means the primary, secondary schools in different parts, and we gathered information during this experimental phase of let's say, what are the pluses or minuses that we can monitor, and also to prepare answers to some of the questions. The full launch of the reform in all schools started last year, 2019, and it is going to be step by step and finished in 2022. Let me just emphasize the key success factors. I group these key success factors in 3 groups. The first is strategic framework and leadership. The second one is a training and upskilling for teachers, but also other staff and stakeholders as well. And the third one is digital transformation of schools. So in the first one, I would like to especially emphasize that it was important first to adopt the strategy by the Parliament, then it is essential to follow it, but also to update it when necessary. Also, I would like to emphasize that this necessity for the agile lean management. So not something that it is going to be, let's say, very vast, but not very up to the problem. So agile lean management is something that's important. So monitoring and continuous evaluation of the preparation and implementation, involvement of all stakeholders, but at the same time, a rather strong leadership, also advised by the international and national experts. We use a lot of EU funding, but also EU expertise in that sense. Around training and upskilling, as I said, there were 2 phases, the experimental phase and then the full launch. And before the full launch of the reform, we prepared 1 year of training and upskilling for all teachers. It was a combination of face-to-face, so several face-to-face sessions across the country, at least four sessions for each teacher. But at the same time, it was a continuous online training in virtual classroom using learning management systems. It was about new curricula, teaching and assessment methods, inquiry-based learning, student-centered learning, but also ICT skills should be enhanced. And we really worked a lot, what you said before, on autonomy of teachers, but also autonomy of school. And the last one to mention it is the digital transformation of school. So it means equipment and textbooks, free textbooks for all pupils, students, but also each primary school students, so from the 1st to 8th grade, was given a tablet, laptop for each teacher in all schools, but also all sorts of information systems in school and connectivity as well. ICT education from the very beginning of primary school, and a lot of open shared digital resources and digital textbooks. So it was an immediate benefit from them from this digital transformation of schools, very visible one, because we successfully respond to the COVID-19 pandemic when Croatian education system turned to distant education practically overnight and successfully. And let me mention one risk. As I said, it was important, and you also mentioned that before, communication with all the stakeholders, but we were not so successful in communication with the teacher unions, and they asked for better salaries just due to the more work and training because of the reform. And we experienced strike lasted 16 working days, and finally we, of course, rise the salaries, but I think that we could avoid it, to be honest about it. And to end it with just a few lessons learned. So education reform is a marathon, so we should prepare it as a marathon, not just as a sprint. Then it needs to be strategically planned with long-term view, but flexible adjustments. It should be constantly monitored and assessed. Of course, sufficient resources is a precondition, and a project-based approach with good planning is the most appropriate. Education reform is a learning process itself, learning by doing and continuous problem solving. And finally, I would like to mention co-creation principles, so involvement of various stakeholder groups is crucial to success. Experts, teachers, students, but also parents, general public, international community. Finally, it is all about people, and especially for young people, and that is very important for our future. So thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Professor Blazanka. Very kind of you to join us today in a short notice, and I would like to thank Professor Moritz for connecting you. And you have a wealth of wisdom and knowledge since you, as a minister, implemented this very successfully, and all the insights you shared, especially the lessons learned, very useful. And taking the agile process, implementing this is what is needed, because in order to avoid mistakes, going step by step is very important. Otherwise, the mistakes will be scaled up, and its recovery will become again a problem. I think doing a proof of concept, maybe at a district level or a state level, to start with, establish some of the model scenarios, model schools, and model teachers, so that we can test it out. India is a very large country. There are about 650 districts approximately. And if they can set up one model school in every district before they scale up to every nook and corner of the country, would save a lot of headaches in complexity of implementation. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we look forward to your leadership and guidance on this mission that India has taken up. If it's possible, we will reach out to you again. Again, have a blessed day and be safe, and continue to serve. Thank you so much. MCs, let's have the next speaker, please.
Professor Karis Siddhappa is currently the Vice Chancellor of VTU Belagavi. The Governor and Chancellor of VTU have appointed Professor Karis Siddhappa as VC for 3 years from the date of assuming charge. During his time as VC, he has engaged in several achievements, such as the introduction of the in-house digital evaluation system, the establishment of VTU skill development centers, and the introduction of the faculty enrichment program, along with the establishment of the Human Resource Development Center. He established centers of excellence in aerospace and defense, water technology and data science technique, manufacturing and testing of lightweight materials, and geospatial technology. Professor Karis Siddhappa strives to make VTU one of the best universities in the world, and to ensure it has a good curriculum and is research-oriented. It is my honor and privilege to invite Professor Karis Siddhappa to speak today.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Shasho. The Honorable Union Minister of Education, Government of India, Dr. Ramesh Pokhriyalji Nishank in absentia. Honorable Chairman, Lead India Foundation, New Jersey, USA, Dr. Hari Hempanapalli ji. Honorable Member of Parliament from Bhubaneswar, Dr. Achyuta Samanta ji. Honorable Secretary, Ministry of Social Justice, former Secretary of Higher Education, Sri R. Subramaniam ji. Professor Srinivas Kumar, my co-host from JNTU Anantapur. Professor Govardhan, Rector, JNTU Hyderabad. Many keynote speakers, distinguished guest speakers, supporting organizations, media partners, my dear participants, colleagues and authorities from VTU, and ladies and gentlemen. It is my honor, and with simplicity and humbleness, I accepted the invitation of Dr. Hariji to be a part of this on behalf of VTU as co-host. This webinar being arranged by Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam Memorial Global Webinar to talk about the new national education policy of Government of India 2020 in collaboration with Lead India, USA, and JNTU Hyderabad, JNTU Anantapur, VTU Belagavi. Friends, any education system, whether it is primary or school or college education, will evolve to educate, to encourage, and to enlighten the stakeholders. There could be some repetitions. Please excuse me for the same and take it as revision. Being a teacher, I would like to revise few things on national education policy. As you are aware, the new national education policy 2020 of our country has got three distinct visions. Number one, an education system that contributes to an equitable and vibrant knowledge society by providing high quality education to all. Secondly, develops a deep sense of respect towards the fundamental rights, duties, and constitutional values, bonding with one's country, and also a conscious awareness of one's role and responsibility in changing the world. Thirdly, instill skills, values, and disposition that supports responsible commitment to human rights, sustainable development, and living and global well-being, thereby reflecting a truly global citizen. In short, our national education policy is trying to build a country with powerful youngsters, simply not being being a human, they want to be human being. That is the kind of setup we are talking about. The national education policy, which has been so debated and all the honorable speaker have mentioned about it, it has been a big news in various media across the globe. And also it had its own impact on all the stakeholders. Talking about the policy and some of the reviews, I will be sharing some of my thoughts in the implementation part. If you look at the 21st century requirements, the quality of education which is required, we need to have quality universities and colleges. In this regard, we need to develop very thoughtful, well-rounded, creative individuals through our quality education system or universities or colleges. We also need to enable the integrated subjects on more specialized areas to attain 21st century capabilities across the range of various disciplines and professionals, technical and vocational subjects as well. to develop character, ethical and constitutional values, intellectual curiosity, scientific temperament, creativity, and spirit of service is another goal in or the responsibility of universities and colleges. Enable personal accomplishment and enlightenment, constructive public engagement, and productive contribution to the society, societal participation by the stakeholders or the students in general. We need to prepare our students for more meaningful and satisfying lives, and also work roles and enable economical independence in them. So to do these kind of activities or to achieve inspiration, we need to have some key changes in the policy or the system. So to achieve these goals, we are trying to move towards multidisciplinary colleges and university. We are moving towards teaching our students in local or Indian languages wherever possible. We are trying to have faculty and institutional autonomy. We are trying to have redesigned or revamped curriculum, various pedagogies, assessment, and student support from the government and private entrepreneurs. We are having a key factor to improve our research through National Research Foundation, governance of higher education institutions independently by a very effective and independent boards, and very important activity of this program is going to be a regulation system, which is going to be a single regulator for entire education system or higher education system. And we are trying to have increased access, equity, and inclusive education system. Now, these are all the goals set or the changes in the system for which we are very familiar. Now, my views on some of the implementation plan are how to go about and how to achieve a quality education system in a country which is with so much of diversity in nature. Now, as many of my earlier speakers pointed out, we need to have high quality teachers in the institutions. What I mean to say is the development of human resources. The 21st century gurus who can inspire the students, who can facilitate the students, who can make them learn to earn knowledge and skill. Information is available. Abundant information is available. Information available is so much, so vast, it may lead to confusions in the minds of young people. But we need gurus who can translate that information into knowledge through his or her own actions in the universities and colleges. We talk about guided skill. We talk about analytical ability of the students' assessment. We talk about many pedagogies required to handle the present generation, etc. In my opinion, to do all these things, we need to have a concrete, high-quality teachers training programs wherein we profile our teachers. As we are trying to break the barriers by offering multidisciplinary programs in higher education, we also should break these barriers of teaching. A particular teacher would teach a course what he has studied. So let us allow here also passion. Teachers who are passionate in learning new technologies, new subjects, new courses can deliver. Somebody from a civil engineering background, if he is very good in image processing, yes, he or she should teach the computer science students. So that is the kind of teachers we need to exploit the multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary in the knowledge domain. And we need to have teachers with high quality of usage of ICT. So we need to improve. And also our teachers should have the science of digital learning and teaching. unless they have more than one pedagogy, more than one skill set to deliver blended education system, which we are trying to plan in future, the teachers may utterly fail in their duty. So therefore, teachers training them. As I said, profiling means we should have a data-driven system. Our Honorable Prime Minister other day was mentioning about the data-driven research, data-driven business, data-driven productions or manufacturing. So in all our planning and resource management, we are basically doing a data analytics. So we do not have any data analytics of our own teachers. Therefore, we need to profile them properly, have a data analytics of each individual teachers in this country so that they deliver best because we identify their resource capabilities and a job of, according to their capability, we can provide them an opportunity to teach in schools or colleges, irrespective of their education background. So therefore, these kind of teachers who are profiled will be able to develop a content, a curriculum, which can be delivered meaningfully in blended mode. They will be capable of implementing the content designed by them, effectively delivering, and also they will have a formative type of assessment where every episode happening in the classroom or through assignments or through project-based learning or through experiential learning, any episode happens, will have a equivalent grade for that, equivalent marks for that. So automatically student will learn continuously and learn continuously. So their credit bank is always improved based on the activities or the episodes conducted by the teachers in their classroom. Now, why I say guru is we talk about problem solving, critical thinking, classroom discussions, as I repeated, experiential learning, project-based learning, etc. So these kind of activities, when you want to do, we need to have really group of wonderful gurus in each and every institution. So that must be the top priority of this plan, so that we'll have a wonderful group of teachers who can handle quality education and who can create a quality human resources in this country, which can cater to the global market. So therefore, we should have some Bharatiya system in teaching and learning so that it can be accepted by the globe in general. The next critical thinking, not only we need to create gurus who can teach technology or subject matter, etc., who can create universal human values in the students, who can create curiosity in them. We can give them ideas towards innovation and guide them to make their own decision. So this decision making is very poor in our system. So who can make students to think and understand? Students must understand their his own capabilities before they take up their higher level learning or understanding of some of the recent technologies or where they suit. So that they will not turn back. So we have, as Professor Subramanian was talking about, we have very different classroom dynamics in this country. So there are slow learners, there are fast learners. Therefore, our teachers should need to identify a group. Accordingly, we must deliver a mechanism so that their learning curve is always on and they learn smooth and they will not be dropped. No dropouts from schools or colleges. The second statement I wish to make is with respect to students. So here also, the student education also should be a data-driven system, in my opinion. So we need to profile students from early days. What are their passions? What are their interests? Are they interested in music? Are they interested in other cultural activity? Are they interested in some kind of engineering or technology, or in social sciences, or in medicine, or in courses related to psychology, etc. So therefore, so we can slowly understand, we can have a database of such students, which will definitely help in deciding their career path. And it will go a long way in prescribing that, yes, you seems to be good in this. Please take up these kind of electives. you seem to be good in this, go to these kind of courses. I think you will exceed, you will excel. Definitely you will have an opportunity to grow further. So that kind of a data-driven harvesting of the knowledge which is hidden is going to be very, very useful. And it definitely creates passion in the students. It will solve many problems. Sometimes as parents, we do err. Unnecessarily, we expect our own kids to do X, Y things without understanding their capabilities. So that kind of sorrows or miseries which you will face at the end of 4 years or 5 years, those things will go off if you carefully follow a student profiling and try to assess them from very early days so that we help them to choose their learning curve and also career path. So that's another yes. And here again, teachers will come into picture. We need to make these students to participate in the education system. We are not going to compete each other for first class or second class or ranking, etc. Meaningful participation is one thing which I highly advocate or request my colleagues to implement in the classrooms. So it must be a healthy participation in learning. Then a very comprehensive equity assurance plan for this country is very much required. Though we are talking about financial assistance to various weaker sections, economically weaker sections, especially able people, OBCs, SCs, STs, etc. So again, here profiling is required. Some database is required. See, we should, these financial incentives given are the special economical education zone Government of India is trying to create in some of the remote places or in tribal areas. They must reach the most eligible and the people who are in need. So for that, again, this equity assurance plan in education will go a long way in helping the student community and also their parents. The another very important thing which I want to talk about is about the administration in higher education institutions. Now, in our new plan, we have planned to have a board of governors, so which is solely responsible for our education system. This is one thing which should happen very immediately, and the governance should be controlled by eminent educationalists, very highly professionals, retired administrators from the education who have worked in education system, philanthropists, educational entrepreneurs, top-notch alumni, representatives of faculty and parents, and students. Students also must this. So when they grow to some level, the curriculum design should come from student side. Yes, so these are the courses I want. This is the change I want in your administration. This is the kind of things which are happening. So therefore, please look into that kind of information. Again, it is data driven. I am passionate about creating a data of this, and so that we analyze properly and try to mitigate the problems very quickly, and we will definitely have wonderful solutions. The other drawback, as many of my speakers talking about, we have a lot of digital divide. That gap shall be minimized as early as possible. We need to have wonderful IT infrastructure implemented with suitable bandwidth and suitable gadgets to the students. For example, in assurance plan, we need to have good digital tab or a laptop or a smartphone to our students, so that they are not denied from the accessibility of information and the knowledge which is given to them. So the college education will become meaningful when you go towards that kind of a plan, wherein you measure the quality of the education and the system in any institution in terms of what kind of bandwidth they have, what kind of Wi-Fi facility they have, what kind of IT infrastructure they have, and what kind of group of teachers they have. As I said, this goes in hand to create a passionate educational program or a learning program. Last, not the least, I wish to have a counseling system in each and every institution. A counseling not only to the students, it also to parents, to understand their own strength, understand the strength of their own kid, so that they don't demand which is not acceptable to his or her daughter or son, so that they do not enjoy the learning in schools or colleges. Therefore, parents also must be made a part of this kind of program. Now, to sum up, we need to have a system wherein everybody would be given equity and assurance in terms of quality education. As per our the aspirations of our Honorable Prime Minister and also our Higher Education Minister, we need to have a very concrete, educational system or a ecosystem in education with one voice. And while implementing, we need to create an ecosystem which will enable the teachers or the professors will have their own learning continuous, and independently they also teach their students to learn continuously, and they create an environment wherein students come to school or colleges with smile and go with smile. So unless you do that kind of an ecosystem, I think we will fail miserably without doing anything except for some few statistics. So therefore, our learning should be measured in terms of knowledge, in terms of skill set, so that they choose their career path. And one of the very big impact this NEP 2020 is going to have is about the knowledge of students. The students are permitted to have deep knowledge in more than one domain, so that they will not have any break in their career path. And also they are allowed to learn something what is happening in the other domain, so that they can also have feeling of multidisciplinary. With these few words, I thank you all for hearing me, and I thank especially Dr. Hari for giving me an opportunity to share some of my thoughts on new National Education Policy 2020. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. You shared real practical issues. I think these are the ones probably the new education policy already considered. If not, I would like to advise them to consider them seriously, because until and unless we follow the practical issues, not on the paper, but this is a thing that has to be implemented throughout the country, such a vast diversity of regions, religions, geographies, cultures, and it has to convince the stakeholders that this is something that they can swallow. Most of the time, the teachers are doing the job as a job, not as a teacher. In the age-old Indian Gurukul kind of concept, this has to bring. They need to get engaged with their students one-on-one, and they need to understand who is a fish, who is a monkey. Give the monkeys to climb the trees and give the fish to swim in the water. Don't measure the fish to climb a tree, its performance. I think those are the kind of early identifications. Enabling them to pursue their passion will definitely go a long way. And again, I would like to thank you for being a co-host for this, and hope all of your affiliated college students and professors and faculty heard you. And I would like to look forward to working with you in the near future. So there's so much to do in the education sector, especially India. And we need to bring the glory back to Nalanda and the Takshashila kind of thing. Now, the world should look forward to coming to India to get their wisdom, knowledge, and education, to be a responsible citizens of this planet, to preserve and protect our future generations. So thank you so much again. So MC, let's invite Professor Van Ruijten Mortis as the next speaker.
Professor Maurits van Ruijten is chairman of IBAT College Dublin and GISMA Germany. He studied and lectured at Utrecht University and Erasmus University. He also served as the executive vice president at the University of Westminster. Professor Ruijten has been widely published on international education and university management. He is actively involved in various international organizations. He holds awards such as the Constance Meldrum Prize for Vision and Leadership and the Emblema Auro. It's my honor and privilege to invite Professor Maurits van Ruijten to deliver his keynote address.
Thank you very much for your kind introduction. And thank you very much, Dr. Hari, for having me here at this panel. And greetings to all, and greetings to Your Excellencies, to colleagues, to friends, to guests, and hopefully also many students. This is a joyous moment. in many parts, in many countries in the world, when we talk about education, we are more talking about budget cuts and reduction of spending. Whilst here in India, with the new education policy, we are talking about a government which really is willing and able to invest in education and understands the importance of education for the social and economic development of their country. And that is really heartwarming and reassuring. Now, there are many elements of the new education policy, and of course, there can be questions about what exactly they mean and how they will be implemented, and I will not go into that. But the basic message that this is actually being presented is in itself already a very important step forward, I think, for India. Let me pick out one, and one will not be surprised which one I pick out of the many, many things which have been announced in the policy. And that is that India actually announced that after many years of discussion, that it's interested in opening up to foreign universities and to have a presence in India, but of course under certain constraints, and that makes a lot of sense. I think it makes a lot of sense indeed for Indian higher education to want to see some best practice and some foreign institutions being involved, engaged with innovative ways of education in India. I hope that India will focus very much on innovation in professional and vocational education, rather than what some other countries have been doing in similar kind of situation and get seduced by the big brands. Now, as the introduction just said, I'm actually a produce myself of research-led top 100 universities, and I've taught in many of them. But really what I think India and many other countries really need is a further strengthening of professional vocational institutions rather than just the research-led institutions, and not be seduced by the label, as some people are seduced by the label on a jacket or a shirt. Actually, this is an opportunity to go beyond that. 98, 99% of our students are studying because they want a career. And that is good news, because it is those people who are the backbone, who are forming the backbone of the economy and society. And this is really what we really want to invest in that professional and vocational education, as that is what is going to make this new education policy a historic opportunity. This is an historic opportunity because India and Indian education can transform from being trend following to trend setting. And let me explain in just a few simple points, 3 simple points, what I mean by that. When it comes to professional education, when it comes to employability and so on, we all recognize that especially experiential learning is crucially important, and it's reassuring to see in the policy that, for instance, at school level, backless days are being introduced so that students actually get introduced to professions and vocations. Now, what does this mean at tertiary level? Experiential learning, nobody is against that, but it's not always done very well. Sure, we allow our students to do an internship. They might even get credits for it. It is like before we throw a student into the deep end on graduation, we allow them to test the water. That's great. And we make sure they do not drown when they fall into that water. But actually, they're not that well prepared for it. And when it comes to work integrated learning, when it comes to experience integrated learning, it is actually about how do we prepare that student for the real world of learn in steps, not just in 1 or 2 trials, but actually year after year, take them closer to being really successful in that real world. And that is really where I think India now has a big opportunity, and that is to build in that gaining of experience, that employability and so on in steps year after year. Now, of course, I've listened carefully to also what my friend Blaženka just said, and so be careful if you say to professors to teachers and so on, saying, well, by the way, we also want you now to focus on carefully preparing students for learning in the real world, the reaction might be, hey, we already have to teach so many hours, we have to publish papers and so on, now we have to do this as well. We, of course, are risk at pushback. And that leads me to the second thing, and that is why this is now such a big opportunity is because we can actually use digital tools, we can develop digital tools to make that transition from learning to working so much smoother. We can use these digital tools like simulations, like virtual role play, virtual reality, as a way to help students to prepare for the actual real experience. It is a very cost-effective and actually a very fun-like preparation for being successful in the real world. And I do use the word fun, so also refer to things like gamification and using games and so on, because it is very important. And I so much agree with the previous speaker when you say students have to smile, they have to smile more. Sometimes I wonder whether we do not approach education the same way we approach medicine. And that is, if the medicine doesn't taste bitter, it cannot be very good. If education is not boring, it cannot be good. Actually, the opposite is true. Unless our students have fun learning, it is not a good education. And gamification, for instance, is a very powerful tool when it comes to preparing students for employment. Not only for young kids, by the way, even someone like me with a lot of gray hair actually learn much better when I actually enjoy learning. And it's not only learning, it's also when it comes to performing in my work. When I have fun, when I enjoy working, I actually perform better. And that brings me to the third point. And that is, when it comes to education, we also have to recognize that actually the difference between learning and working is getting smaller and smaller when it comes to the knowledge economy. We traditionally have a system whereby we learn first, and then at a certain age, we feel we have all the knowledge, and then we go and apply it in real world. Now, that is a very outdated concept of how a society is put together. In a knowledge economy, it is not that you have all the knowledge. You are learning all the time. But initially, when you study, your focus is more on learning and a little bit on experiencing the working. And when you graduate, you shift that attention, your focus is more on working, but you better still be learning, otherwise sooner or later you become obsolete. And this is what I say in my capacity also as co-chairman of the World Association for Cooperative and Work Integrated Education, WAIS, which is based in the States. I keep on saying this, it is work integrated learning as well as learning integrated work. And we should see the relationship between the classroom and the workplace much more as a fluid relationship. And the digital tools are absolutely crucial in establishing that relationship, so that also when it comes to universities and colleges, they don't see their relationship just with preparing students for work, but actually they also recognize they should have a relationship with those who are in the workplace, with employers, etc. Stay engaged with their alumni by upskilling and updating their knowledge all the time, but also helping employers to develop their workforce. Universities and colleges in a knowledge economy have a very different role to play than they used to in the 20th century and before. And that is actually what I hope the new education policy in India will really pick up on. This is a big historic opportunity for India to really show the world what a modern education could look like. And I have all the confidence based on the fact that, you know, what is coming out of the new education policy, that India indeed will become more and more trend-setting when it comes to especially professional and vocational education, and not just trend following. Thank you very much, Dr. Harry, for giving me the opportunity to get this hopefully very positive message across to everybody. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor, for joining us today. I think you really been instrumental in connecting with us. You are in the higher education session and you are part of our committee to come up with the proceedings for the modernization of the higher education. I appreciate your inputs. Thank you so much for joining us today again, in spite of your busy schedule, and also connecting with so many other speakers that are relevant for this topic. Appreciate, and we'll continue to work with you. MCs, please introduce the next speaker, Professor S. Srinivas Kumar, Vice Chancellor of JNTU, Anantapur.
Professor S. Srinivas Kumar is a faculty member of Electronics and Communication Engineering at the JNTU Anantapur, where he is currently serving as Vice Chancellor. He has delivered more than 85 visiting lectures at reputed teaching institutes. He has published 69 research papers in national and international journals. He has supervised 14 PhD candidates in the area of image processing and antennas, and is contributing to the development of JNTU Anantapur on the academics, infrastructure, and research front. Let's welcome Professor S. Srinivas Kumar to deliver his speech for today's webinar.
Thank you, Shreya. Indeed, I'm very happy to be a part of this global webinar. Heartfully, I thank Dr. Hari Panapalli for giving us the opportunity to collaborate. And many distinguished speakers are here, and I heartfully congratulate them for sharing their thoughts. And we are very happy to be a part of this particular group. And indeed, Jawaharlal Nehru Technological University, Anantapur, is a well-known university, technological university, established in the year 1946 as a college campus. Then in the year 2008, it has been changed as an university. From then onwards, it is stepping ahead to look forward to develop the education in this particular region, in particular the technology. And well, I have gone through the national education policy. Yesterday, I had an opportunity to go through the Honorable Prime Minister's speech as well as through different speakers. And indeed, I'm not a person who wish to speak positively or negatively about anything, but I would like to plan how the challenges are to be implemented, or how the challenges are to be considered. And today, if we consider the national education policy, in particular the higher education policy, this has become more like a learner-centric education policy than a discipline-centric education policy. So in a discipline-centric education policy, we can see that the student can master in one particular subject, maybe electronics and communication. Suppose if I consider engineering, in electronics and communication engineering, I can make him to master in one particular subject. But in a learner-centric policy, it is very, very difficult to see that the student becomes master in one particular subject, because after 2 years, he may change his interest, he may switch over to another subject. In such case, he may become a jack of all and master of none. So how do we solve this kind of problem? This is a challenging issue which I consider. And another problem which I find is a multiple entry and multiple exit scheme. And when we consider multiple entry and multiple exit scheme, as Honorable Prime Minister was speaking, and after the first year or after the second year, we may have to give a certificate course, or after third year of completion, we may have to give a diploma degree. After final year, we may have to give a degree course. But as such, now our engineering curriculum is concerned, during the first year, we are introducing the science and mathematics that is relevant to the engineering. And during the second year and third year, we are introducing the basic subjects. And during the final year, we are introducing more in the elective subjects. Thereby, we are trying to see that the student is molded into a particular curriculum and come to a particular stage. But when we give this kind of certificate course or a diploma course or a degree course, how can we change the curriculum to suit to the needs of the student, and such that he is a certificate holder in a particular engineering discipline, or he is having a certificate holder in a diploma, or he is having a certificate holder of a degree to a particular subject? It is very, very difficult task to frame the syllabus. How do we meet this challenge? And this is the one point which I consider really a challenge, because not only as an administrator, as a vice chancellor, I'm having 34 years of teaching experience, and I was there in many of the disciplines as a board of studies member and many other things. And I consider really it is a challenging task. And second thing is, we want a person to be a holistic approach, and we want a extracurricular activities, we want a co-curricular activities, we want a basic knowledge in a particular discipline, and we want a skill set, we want knowledge. In all these aspects, we have to mold the particular student. And in this particular aspect, definitely I consider very, very difficult for the implementation point of view. And as a group of people who are intellectuals, we have to see how this particular education policy is to be implemented and how this particular policy is to be framed to see that the person becomes a holistically developed than becoming a jack of all and master of none. So that is another challenging task which I feel. And even in the examinations also, it becomes very, very difficult. And today, the gross enrollment ratio is nearly 21% in the country. And our interest is to increase the gross enrollment ratio. So one of three parameters that are to be considered: equity, accessibility, and affordability. These are the three parameters that are to be equity, accessibility, and affordability. So we have got 6.5 lakh villages in this country, but hardly 1.5 lakh villages are connected by optical fiber. But how do we connect the rest of the people who are in the rest of the villages to access the data? That is really another difficult task. As one of the speakers was telling, the accessibility is another important challenge that is to be considered. So there are certain challenges, how these challenges are to be faced, how these challenges are to be considered. That is really, I mean, we are in favor of the national education policy, but how well the national education policy is to be implemented, how well we can plan to implement it. See that the students can become masters in the subjects. They should not become jack of all, master of none. That is what my interest is. So in this particular policy, if we think about this, and we are considering a BTech electronics and communication engineering with a minor degree in a computer science engineering. Suppose if the student completes additional 20 credits in the computer science engineering related subjects, and if he is a student of electronics and communication engineering, in addition to the 170 credits which he gets in the electronics and communication engineering, if he gets another 20 credits, we are issuing a degree in the computer science engineering also. That way, a major degree and a minor degree concept is coming, and we are implementing it already. But in such case, there is no problem. But in the case where we want a multiple entry scheme or a multiple exit scheme, that is really a wonderful challenge that the syllabus is to be framed accordingly. So this is to be discussed at length. So I'm not speaking anything about the limitations or disadvantages, but it is the challenges that are there before us to implement the policy and how well we can plan for it. That is what my question is. So let us discuss at length, and I'm sure that we'll alleviate all the problems to implement the national education policy and see that the Andhra Pradesh government and in particular Jawaharlal Nehru Technological University, Anantapur, will be in the forefront. Dr. Hari Pirpalli knows me very well. I'm equally active now in future also to be a part of the education system and to see that the education is a backbone for the country, and education, economy, energy, and environment. These are the four parameters that are to be considered. And heartfully, I thank Dr. Kasturi Ranganji, Dr. Sridhar, Dr. Ramachandran, Dr. Anurag Behar, who are the members in developing this education policy. And we are in favor of them to see that this particular policy is implemented and successful. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Srinivas Kumar, for being a co-host today. Wonderful to working with you, and I look forward to working with you again. So again, Dr. Kalam said, let's provide affordable quality healthcare to keep India healthy, affordable quality education to keep India educated. And now we are getting into educating the world as well. And also, as you rightly said, preserve and protect this planet for future generations by paying attention to the environment. And also peace and harmony is needed in this world. So Dr. Kalam wants to develop spiritual families. I look forward to working with you, sir. Thank you so much for your wonderful message, especially on the entry and exit kind of thing. I think that will definitely revolutionize. People can take short-term courses. I'm on the board of Rutgers University in New Jersey for the executive education. So we have short-term courses, 1 week, 2 weeks, 2 months, 3 months. I think that kind of certification courses also will be possibly considered in the new education policy, where people can sign up and take a specific course for their job or professional growth. Thank you again. Look forward to working with you. So now our next speaker will be Dr. Sunil Roy, Vice Chancellor, UPES, Dehradun. Please welcome.
Dr.
MCs.
Sunil Rai is the Vice Chancellor of University of Petroleum and Energy Studies. A veteran academician, he has a vast experience with 20 years in academics, 21 years with the Indian Navy, and 2 years in the corporate world. Prior to joining UPES, he was the Vice Chancellor of MIT Arts Design and Technology University, Pune, and Director on Board of Maharashtra IT Corporation, Government of Maharashtra. Dr. Rai has published papers on business continuity and higher education in various journals and published articles in management magazines and business education columns in newspapers. He's an excellent communicator and has addressed national and international conferences and earned accolades for his oratorical skills and style of public speaking. Let's have a warm welcome for Dr. Sunil Rai to deliver his keynote address.
Good evening. At the outset, let me begin by thanking the Lead India USA for giving us this opportunity for me to participate in the Abdul Kalam Memorial webinar. It's so very timely that this has actually come. First and foremost, I just wanted to reconfirm, am I heard clearly? All right, okay.
You are good, sir. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. So at the outset, I would like to actually congratulate the government of India, and of course under the guidance of our Honorable Prime Minister, Mr. Modi, to bring out this national new education policy at the very right time. I would touch on the three aspects. So I applaud this policy, and most of the speakers before me have already comprehensively covered about the features of the policy and a few of the implementation aspects. I will also cover three of them. The most striking factor of the new education policy is the holistic development of students to empower them and enable them to take on the uncertainties of future. And who could have thought the world would be like this 6 months back? The whole world has changed. The uncertainties have increased, the uncertainty of economics, the uncertainty of well-being, etc. And these things have now, change has come to stay. So if in 80s, the job roles and job profiles used to be relevant for 20 years once created, they became only for 10 years when we started coming to this century. And then in the way the pandemic has changed the world order, we are in for some very quick changes in terms of economics. For example, the manufacturing sectors of the world might shift from where they are today to different locations, maybe India, maybe Vietnam. We are expecting that these things will not only change once, but they will keep on changing. So where I'm coming from is that for a youngster, it will be very difficult to prepare himself or herself in one kind of set of skills because the things will change so fast that that particular job role may not be relevant. That particular technology may not be relevant. That particular economics structure may not be relevant. And so therefore, what is important is to create lifelong learners. And if you have to create lifelong learners, we have to actually give them skills for life, skills of creativity, skills of personal branding, skills of understanding future technologies, entrepreneurial nature, interdisciplinary. Today, one cannot think of any kind of learning with one strict discipline. If you talk of robotics, you're talking about 6, 7 sciences, etc. there. You talk of Internet of Things, you're talking of 6, 7 sciences there. So therefore, when it is a situation is going to be like this, I think the NEP has come out very rightly by including sports, culture, art, literature. And these are things which make the wholesome personality. What it makes them people do is to understand the context comprehensively, because context is made of economics and people. And once you are able to understand, then you should be able to pitch yourself. Now, these things are easier said than done. It's easier to teach physics. It's easier to teach chemistry. It's far more difficult to teach these life skills. So it's a good thing that the policy has included all these things. Where are the teachers who can teach? And I think the previous speaker did comment on that, that we need teachers who can teach these kind of life skills. How do you teach creativity? How do you teach these kind of understanding people, understanding the entrepreneurship, and so on and so forth? So I think we will need to prepare these faculty in humanities and life skills is one big challenge, because what has been happening in past is that these skills were considered actually subservient to the hard skills. It was more important to learn technology, maths. I'm not underplaying them at all, but all these life skills were not considered to be very important. So I think the first challenge is to now create the faculty, create the mindset for these life skills, which is very, very comprehensive, which is very important. And Atmanirbhar Bharat, what the Prime Minister is talking about, actually needs people who are learners for life, who can take on any kind of situation headlong. So the first one is to create those teachers who will teach these life skills. The second aspect about the implementation is about the change of mindset. Who could believe 6 months back that we will go fully online? I took over UPS in first week of March as Vice Chancellor. Mid of March, we were told to go totally online. I mean, I couldn't have, fortunately for us at UPS, the infrastructure was there in place. We had the best of the IT infrastructure. We had, of course, the mindset of teachers, and we were prepared to take on online. We thought we can do it easily. In a week's time, we came to know that, okay, while you can do it easily, it's the ecosystem that has to be ready. The students have to be ready. Their parents have to be ready. The rest of the society have to be ready. And therefore, it is the mindset that things can be done. It was being talked about in the NEP policy, and just now the previous speaker was also talking about this whole thing of migration. You know, this whole thing about 1 year the student does gets a certificate, 2 year the student does gets a diploma, and the 4 year when it does, he gets a degree. Now, there are some difficulties which are being felt, but this is actually more of a mindset problem as I read it. Frankly speaking, the education system was designed like that. There were ITIs, there were polytechnics, and there were engineering colleges. And the plan was that if there are 1,000 ITI trained people, there will be 100 diploma holders and there will be 10 engineers. Unfortunately, this pyramid got turned upside down. So today, for 1,000 engineers, we have only got 10 craftsmen. Now, this is where the vocational aspect that has come in our NEP policy is a celebrated exercise. And therefore, this aspect, so many people address these conferences, the media people are asking me that this kind of a facility is being created so that you will have low dropout rates. And people can say that we have zero dropouts. Now, well, that is not the idea. The spirit of the NEP is not zero dropout. The spirit of the NEP is to give that freedom. Now, think of a student from a village. This person cannot come and study in Delhi. Now, how it is that 2 years the student does in the local place, wherever the student is, at the low cost and in a unchallenging circumstances. And after the person has earned the credits, it can be going into the credit bank, makes himself or herself confident, now comes to Delhi and joins in the 3rd year. Now, this is something which is the best way of including people. And this is something which the world over we need. There's a huge divide as far as infrastructure facilities are concerned the world over. There is Africa, there is Brazil, and therefore you need to have this kind of a mobility possible. So the skepticism should give way to the spirit of this one is what I am suggesting. It's already been suggested that this cannot happen without proper infrastructure. The bandwidths have to be created, and it has to be done collaboratively. Expecting governments to do it may not be possible. If there is one laptop in every village, the trick will be done. But then that one laptop has to reach. So this industry and the society has to combine to ensure that this kind of facility is made available. Now we're talking about National Research Foundation, a very welcome idea. I think at the implementation stage, so of course, we are getting ready for virtual labs with the IIT Delhi has already created And we at UPS are also creating our own virtual labs with augmented reality and virtual reality in our School of Design. Now, while this is all being done, this will also need funding. And while the government is announcing this funding, this public-private partnership needs to be understood in the proper spirit. There should not be any discrimination between public and private players, is what I'm suggesting. Because generally, this is what has been the experience in past. I'm sure that we will not have those repeat of those kind of things. Emphasis is on partnership. The policy is clearly laying out that anybody who attains this level in accreditation will actually be available, the NRF will be available to them. So I think what I am suggesting here is that the implementation is that let us focus on the spirit of the NEP while we are implementing. I just took 2 examples. And of course, very importantly, we need to develop faculty for online. This online blended is no longer a good thing to have. Online and blended is a must thing to have. It improves efficiency, it improves reach, it improves inclusivity, and it improves economics of delivery. While at UPS, we are doing everything possible that even if situations are good, we have decided that 25% of our curriculum we will do online, so that the time which is freed from the student, they can go into the industry and practice vocational skills, and which is what is important. So I think if we look at in the implementation, this particular spirit, it should be doing the trick, because NEP is a very welcome document in any case. Finally, I would just like to put my views on the assessments. So it's a good thing that we are changing the education policy philosophy. It is a good thing that we are including different kind of subjects, we're including different kind of formats. I think what needs to be, and the NEP does spell it out, that the assessments have to move from being summative as it is today to being formative. So we are not to test the cramming and the remembering ability of the student, but we are supposed to test whether this student will be able to put the student into different situations, and the student should be able to find his own solutions. So when we are doing this assessment, the assessments will have to be redesigned. These have to be multi-mode. These cannot be only pen paper based, multiple answer type, short answer type. I mean, these have to be more made multimodal in terms of project basis, in terms of simulations, and so on and so forth. Multi-point, it has to be done by the peers, it has to be done by the teachers, and it should be done by the industry. Because just we giving the assessment to our students will not make them what we are thinking of making. What I am suggesting is use assessment as learning. You know, there are frameworks like Coursera, etc., where they're using assessment as learning. So if we can use the assessment itself to take the students gradually to different levels and then certify them that what are the kind of levels they have received. So I'm suggesting a different kind of assessment scheme altogether to make the NEP really work. The Honorable Secretary of Social Welfare had already laid out those 5 pillars, which I think I also endorse. And while as implementers, we should keep those 5 pillars in mind. And I'm certain this NEP is here to prepare the students for life, make a more resilient society to take care of any kind of eventualities that might come up in future. And who knows, we are in for more the way things are shaping up. So with this, I would like to once again thank Hari for giving me this opportunity to express my views. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Sunil. It's a short notice, but you are able to join us today. Wonderful, and look forward to working with you in the future. And hopefully, post-COVID, we will meet. I think your insights are very practical, and hopefully, the team will consider to all the recommendations that you provided in this webinar. And post-webinar, we will compile a proceedings of this webinar and publish them so that whoever needs to access them, we will have them freely available. Thank you so much, sir. So MCs, our next speaker is Professor Manuel Garabal. So he's the valedictory keynote speaker, but because of various other conditions, he would like to go next. Please introduce him.
Our next speaker is Professor Manuel Freire Garabal, a professor of pharmacology at the School of Medicine at the University of Santiago de Compostela. He has a PhD in medicine and surgery and is the director of the SNL Leonard Levi research group focused on the discovery of new drugs against cancer and infection, including the new anti-SARS-CoV-2 compounds. He is a fellow of the Royal Society of Medicine in IBNS and authored over 100 articles and over 20 books, and has won 20 international and national awards. He's a member of several boards of advisors of the European Union and the Spanish scientific policy bodies. He is also the founder of the Compostela Group of Universities. Let's welcome Professor Manuel Freire Garibal to deliver the valedictory keynote address for today's webinar.
Professor Manuel.
Thank you very much. Authorities, dear Dr. Hanapali, speakers, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for inviting me to participate in this webinar. Thanks to the lectures given today by the keynote speakers in this webinar, we can further understand and support the challenges posed by the new Indian education policy for the 21st century. A national education policy, called an IAP, has followed a highly participatory open procedure. The draft submitted by Cabinet Minister of Education when he took office last year, that was the result of years of deep reflections, was exposed to the public domain for a long time and received 2 billion suggestions. In this way, Croatia's former Minister of Science and Education, who spoke before, affirmed that sharing and co-creation is essential for success, and that's the case. NIP objectives are really ambitious, aiming to achieve universal access to education, looking for universal literacy and numeracy for all students by 3rd grade in all elementary schools of India by 2025, and 100% gross enrollment rate from preschool to secondary level by 2030. NIP also aims at a gross enrollment ratio in higher education, including vocational education, of about 50% by 2035, coming from the present 26.3%, what means an increase of at least 3.5 crore new seats to higher education institutions. But what is even more important is that this project now became law, outstands the importance of how learning should be more open and distance learning, promoting online and digital education. To this end, Union government will create an autonomous body, the National Educational Technology Forum, NATF, which will create infrastructure and digital content to promote new capacities. They will serve to meet electronic education needs, not only of schools, but also higher education. So this follows the recommendations given by Dr. Panapali, who outlined the necessity to increase the demand for online and blended online on-site programs that may increase the efficacy and efficiency of education, favoring cross-cultural relations and adapting education to the future market worldwide. It may be more affordable, even especially for those who have less resources for education. In this way, Dr. Sanil Ray, Vice Chancellor of YUPP, also pointed out that the most tricky factor is the holistic view of what should be a lifelong learning process. This project entails regulatory and structural changes which will serve to resolve the traditional separation between rote learning and vocational education. Even more, the Minister of Social Justice outlined that NIP involves the entire educational system, school and higher education. As far as school education is concerned, it's to be much more equitable and inclusive. and respectful of the multilingualism that is nowadays in all parts of the world, but especially in India, where big amounts of people speak different languages. So we have to be respectful with that. And it's part of the culture and it's part of the educational process. The government will create innovative educational centers that facilitate multiple learning paths based on formal and non-formal modes. They will allow this stimulation and monitoring of students and the learner levels and decrease dropouts to the mainstream. Study plans will change, keeping students with the necessary training for the 21st century. As the Vice-Chancellor of FTU said, education should provide economic independence, but also give way to passions that satisfy lives. New policy aims to increase essential knowledge, critical thinking, and experiential learning based on the acquisition of competencies that should be evaluated adequately. My good friend Maris Marrogen, Global University Systems Academic CEO, outlined that experiential learning is crucial. When it is adopted, the educational process works better, especially when digital tools are adopted in the process, making learning more effective, affordable, and makes of it a fun experience. The distance between learning and working becomes lower into the knowledgeable economy implemented when lifelong learning process is included, avoiding that knowledge becomes obsolete in different professions. As far as higher education is concerned, NAP introduces broad-based multidisciplinary comprehensive education under 3 or 4 years schemes. The study plans will be more flexible, integrated new combination of subjects that favor vocational education from different multiple entry points, obtaining the appropriate certifications. Even more, an academic credit bank will serve to digitally accredit academic credits obtained from different institutes so that this can be transferred and accounted for the final degree obtained. The Higher Education Commission of India will be the unique umbrella of higher education, excluding medical and legal education. The higher education system architecture adapts to the new challenges, creating a spectrum of institutions that integrates autonomous university colleges, but also, more importantly, intensive teaching universities and others which are more research profile. As the Vice-Chancellor of Anantapur University commented, we need a quality and sustainable educational system. So it should include other aspects of university life, like research and quality of life. He pointed out that we need a quality education system with integrated objectives, including ethical values and spirit of science. In that regard, the National Research Foundation will take care of promoting research capacities in higher education. Professional education will be part of higher education system. Universities dedicated to health science, law, independent and agricultural techniques, among others, will become multidisciplinary institutions. Just to enter from the distance of several thousand, in fact, 7,588 kilometers between my current residence, Sanxenxo in Spain, and Delhi in India, I am convinced that the national education policy proposes a cutting-edge solution that will serve as an example for national policies around the world. I support Dr. Panapali's opinion that Indian minds are very creative. However, most importantly, they will make the future of new generations of students in India and all over the world brighter. As Dr. Samantha pointed out, India is strong in education and will be stronger with NIP, letting one of the world's most fastest developing countries in the world be even more. Secretary Minister of Social Justice highlighted that there is a necessary not only plan, but also a management plan and funding. NIP is accompanied not only by organizational, but also financial measures essential to support the planet goals. The budget dedicated to education will rise from the current 4% to 6% of GDP as soon as possible, dedicated not only to creating more infrastructures and services, but also to increase direct financial support for students through more scholarships. Former Minister of Science and Education of Croatia also pointed out that this reform is a marathon, not a speed race, and a learning process itself in which many stakeholders have to participate. Amongst them, FTU Vice Chancellor commented that teachers passionate in learning are one of the main actors of the reform, who need to be trained adequately in new methodologies and technologies to do that. I am, besides being a professor, I am also a sailor, and I always follow the famous Indian proverb: we cannot change the direction of the wind, but we can adjust the sails. We have already wind, but need a boat and good sailors to reach the destinations. So I think that in this moment, we have all the elements to follow up this nice NIP project, and we will follow up in the years to adopt it all over the world. So, well, finally, I want to thank Dr. Panapali for having invited me to this brilliant initiative, which is part of a very ambitious programs that is having a success that exceeds expectations. Let us not forget that the latest webinar on the impact of COVID on economy has far exceeded 5 million audience worldwide. Congratulations, Professor Panapali.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor Manuel. It's wonderful. Thank you so much for also being the chair for the preparing the proceedings of the webinar. And we will continue to work with you. And especially, I would like to thank your son, Professor Manuel Jr. So he is wonderful. And we look forward to working with Al Khalifa Business School as well in the next few months. Again, appreciate you joining in spite of your busy schedule, late flights. So be safe wherever you are and take care. Thank you. So speakers, our next, MCs, our next speaker will be Professor TV Kattimani. Please introduce him.
Professor T.V. Kattimani completed his graduation in his mother tongue, Kannada, and his post-graduation in Hindi language and literature. He was taught in Karnataka University, Dharwad, and Maulana Azad National Urdu University, Hyderabad. He served as Vice Chancellor of Indira Gandhi National Tribal University in Madhya Pradesh from January 2014 to December 2019. He has been honored by both national and state governments for his contribution in the field of education. He is trained in tribal languages, culture, literature, music, art, and medicinal practices. It is my honor to invite Professor T.V. Kattimani to deliver his keynote address.
Professor Kattimani, sir, please unmute.
Looks like he's not on the session.
So, sir, he is in the session, but problem is he's not unmuting it.
So, technical staff, could you please unmute Professor Kattimani, please? So while they figure out the technical difficulties, MCs, please introduce the next speaker.
Meanwhile, please call him, sir.
Okay. Dr. Ruchi Dana is a qualified medical practitioner who has transitioned successfully into a seasoned entrepreneur and business leader. Ruchi did her MD from JNMCH AMU and her full-time MBA from Stanford University and is an SSGSA scholar. Additionally, Dr. Ruchi Dana was recognized by Forbes as a top power businesswoman of Middle East 2020. Ruchi is currently the president COO of Duluth Medical Technologies Incorporated, a Silicon Valley-based robotic medical device startup. Furthermore, she is a physician who loves to write about healthcare trends, investing, entrepreneurship, and family business. Ruchi is a frequent speaker at various industry conferences and sits on several corporate and startup boards, including Dana Group, UAE, and Duluth Medical USA. Let's have a warm welcome for Dr. Ruchi Dana to deliver her speech.
Thank you so much, Keshav, for the introduction. Thank you, Dr. Hari, for organizing this. It's an amazing initiative, and I've learned actually quite a lot about the NEP from the speakers themselves. I think it was a very insightful and educational session because it's really bringing back all the memories that I had while I was actually studying in various countries. So I'll give you a brief background about myself. I was born in Libya. So it's in north of Africa. And then we moved to Dubai when I was around 10 years of age. So I did part of my schooling from Libya, part of it from Dubai. And then I went to medical college in India. And further after that, I actually did my full-time MBA from Stanford University. So I've actually studied in 4 different countries. So that's really amazing. And I can give you like firsthand feedback about the educational systems. So I'll start off with like why I actually became a doctor. So as a child, I was actually very interested in like breaking up toys and making new inventions out of the toys. But it's just like both of my parents were doctors, so that was the immediate thing that I had to do. So I actually I studied a lot, and during my 11th and 12th standards itself, I prepared a lot for the medical college entrance examinations, and I got through into like almost 5 medical colleges, and I chose Aligarh Muslim University, which is a central university and amongst the top universities for medical colleges in India. And I made it through in my first attempt. So that was a really exciting point of time in my life. But when I was in my medical college, I actually realized that I really want to make like medical devices, or like I really love to innovate. So I actually found a very good professor who was also my mentor, and he helped me like work on some low cost medical devices. So we made some new inventions. It was really exciting. I wrote a number of papers, I published a number of papers, presented a lot of them. I was actually the first student of my university to get a travel grant to go abroad and present papers. I was really excited. But when I came back to India and I wanted to actually commercialize these devices, even the best of professors in medical college back in those days, they didn't really understand the language of business. Like everybody knew like how to publish papers and how to get your papers approved in peer-reviewed journals. So that was the drill. But like if you talk about business in medical college, like nobody really understood it. So that was back in 2008. And even like the startup ecosystem in India was not very well developed. So nowadays things have changed quite a lot. But like because of that, I actually thought that I should go for an MBA, and I applied to various business schools. I got through into almost all of them. I went for the MIT Admit Weekend, and in fact, I got a full legatum fellowship from MIT. They were ready to pay for even my books. But when the Stanford result came, I actually accepted my business school result from Stanford. So I did a full-time MBA from Stanford, and during this transition phase, there was actually Aligarh Muslim University's Alumni Association that actually helped me quite a lot in terms of like transitioning to the US, even with my luggage. And also so that's the SSGSA Scholar that award that I got. On behalf of that, they actually helped me quite a lot. So once I actually came to Stanford for my full-time MBA, I realized like the education system was completely different from India. Suddenly I realized there were no board exams, there was nothing to actually cram about. So it was really exciting, and I was free to choose a number of courses, a number of classes in different, like even the medical school or the engineering college. So it was a really exciting point of time in my life. And at Stanford, I also took the Stanford Biodesign program. So it's a program in which there are lawyers, engineers, MBA students, doctors, PhD students. Everybody comes together to solve for unmet clinical needs. So that was again a very exciting point of time in my life, and I really loved it. And our team at Stanford actually won the NIH grant from the US government to actually find like unmet clinical needs in China, and I led a trip to China. So that was again like a really exciting point of time, and I was very interested in medical devices. So now I'm actually working on a startup based in the Silicon Valley. It's actually a low-cost robotic surgery startup. And I've filed 2 patents on use of AI in robotic surgery and the use of sensors in robotic surgery. And I'm a frequently invited speaker on the topic of AI in healthcare. So if I was just like maybe studied medicine and followed the postgraduate path and stayed in that discipline, I would have never even thought about AI and healthcare or all of these things. So the reason that I actually got this exposure was because I went to Stanford and I got like the multidisciplinary approach of things, because oftentimes innovation actually happens at the intersection of various disciplines. Because like a doctor would never think of a life without a stethoscope, but it's only like somebody who can think outside of the box can actually think like you can actually replace the stethoscope with some other new devices. Because like if you are in the same discipline, your thoughts get limited to that, and you're not able to actually innovate. So a lot of time innovation actually happens at the intersection of various disciplines. So that's the best part about the new education policy of India, because it talks about like multidisciplinary approach. One of the other good things is that like when I came to Stanford, I realized there was no board exam, but like the current education policy still has a board exam, but I think like that should be relaxed a little, because like worldwide when you look at colleges and universities, there are not really board exams anymore. Like there's a continuous learning and continuous monitoring of how you learn. So that's how things are. One of the other good things about the NEP right now is that there's not much of pressure to actually choose a discipline right there and then. So for example, I became a doctor because like it was just like that was what I thought about like because of my parents, and at an early stage in life you actually had to choose your disciplines. But now that's not anymore, and you can actually have multidisciplinary roles. You can actually interact with other colleges, get to understand what all new things are happening. In terms of recommendations, I would really say like mainly it's about the implementation. So like instead of just making a policy and sitting with it, it's actually about how to actually execute the thing. The results of the policy should be tangible, and there should be a here and now component. So they should be like, for example, in the teachers training, the policy mentions that the B.Ed would start by 2030, and then the graduates that would come out of it, those would be the people who would actually like work on the policy. That's like looking 15 years down the line. So like I would love for the policy to have a much more aggressive transition plan. So they could actually focus maybe on the existing teachers training. There are around 80 lakh teachers who are already there. Or how about like training them to use like various disciplines, to actually use online models, to actually have like maybe a nationwide guest speakers on a single day, so the entire like country is watching a single guest speaker, and have things like this. Because of COVID-19, a lot of focus has come on online education, and a lot of schools are actually adapting it. So why not use it to the best of advantage? I think that would be a best thing. Other thing is that like when I think about continuous assessment, I love that approach, but then when it's come to like actual board exams, then I think that there's something there's a mismatch, because what is measured, that's the thing that's improves, right? So there's a corollary that only what is measured improves. So basically, like if you measure the board exams, then that's what like the students would work towards. So as Dr. Sunil Rai correctly said, that this, if they could use like assessment to learn like online courses like Coursera and all, they have a continuous assessment, and that's how like you can actually like see like in which sector a child actually wants to go as well. So as Dr. Hari also mentioned, like the fish is meant to swim and the monkey is meant to climb the tree. So it's really good to have these continuous assessments, and like to see actually what is a field that a child is really interested in, because then he would be able to follow his passion and do something about it. The other good thing I realized was that, as Dr. Hari correctly mentioned, that there should be like parent and teacher committees and strong effort on getting the PPP involved on a war footing. Because like we can talk about policies, but about the implementation, there's a lot of support that's needed in terms of like getting all the stakeholders involved, getting the right investment into the education system. So like, for example, like I think 6% is the GDP is to be spent on education, but how do we reach there? Because we are not even at 4 or 4.5 right now. So that would be a huge thing. So I think like the change would have to start from ourselves. Like each and every one of us can actually try to volunteer some time out, to try to mentor young students, and try to bring about this change in our own mentality, so that we can actually help for the entire country. And one thing I've realized in the US is that the public schools are much better than the private schools. So a lot of people actually want their kids to study in public schools. So I think there should be some sort of focus on the central government education system and the public schools as well, because that's something that actually defines the future of the entire country, because that's where the bulk of the people actually go to schools. So that's one thing. And apart from that, I would love to talk about like the practical skills that are really necessary for training the teachers and for making the students understand the life skills that would actually help them in the career. Because oftentimes what happens is like the education system trains the student in a theory, but like they don't really learn about like the practical tips to how to approach life, how to actually deal with crisis situations, about even like mental well-being. So these are important issues that should be addressed. So I think like a lot more focus on practical tips and how to deal with crisis situations, how to have the entrepreneurship mindset. I think these are things that were really important to actually be implemented in the NEP. And at the last, I would like to say that technology has become such an important and integral part of our lives these days. So it's best to actually take advantage of that and introduce new small courses, certification courses, or sort of things like, for example, coding can be started in school. And India is actually on the verge of becoming the second largest startup ecosystem. So a lot of focus should go on the new technologies like AO, nanotech, 3D printing, robotics. So these are the skills that would actually refine like the future of the workplace as well. So I think like these are the skills that the country should focus on, the education system should focus on, because we talk about AI and job losses and all, but like if there are more of polymaths, like polymaths are people who have like general knowledge about various skills, I think those are the ones who would become the problem solvers in the future. In the end, I would love to stop with a quote that learning never exhausts the mind. This is a quote by Aristotle, who was a polymath. So he drew the Da Vinci Man, in which like the man is standing and it's within a circle and a square, it's all symmetrical. And he had studied the human anatomy as well as how to paint and how to get your things across. So I think I would end with that quote, that learning never exhausts the mind. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ruchi. It's wonderful. I was reading your bio, so many accomplishments at such a young age. Appreciate it. And I was debating between MIT and Stanford. Since I'm in New Jersey, East Coast, I went to MIT for my executive program. So it's a wonderful place, and both one in the East Coast, one in West Coast. I think Stanford definitely stands out better than anything else. So congratulations and all the laurels that you won. And we look forward to working with you. And thank you for joining the Al Khalifa Business School to provide the research guidance as a dean.